Ask any youth to name the prophets and messengers of Islam, or Sahaba, or anything about Islam. Unfortunately, they will struggle with that. But ask the youth to name a song or singer of such and such song, you'll find them memorize the entire album. So the way we can counter this, and this is very important, I mean to mention this on purpose, the only way to counter this and develop a Muslim identity is by studying Islamic history, which consists of life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the life of the other prophets, all of them, and the life of the Sahaba. And then once all of this is done, to learn the general history of Islam after that. Because our Islamic history is our umbilical cord. And remember, we are an extension of the Ummah. We are not separated from the roots. Our local identity shouldn't ride my Muslim identity. My identification, for example, as a Moroccan or Egyptian or British or an Indian or Pakistani or American or Palestinian or Chinese should not override my Islamic identity. And this is very, very important. This is why Islam came, is to abolish this concept of state-nation. We have our loyalty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to our religion, not to state, country, or a flag. And what happens in India, for example, or in Kashmir, or anywhere in Palestine, in Uyghur, or in Yemen, or in Syria, should be our concern, not the flag or the passport. And this is how we build a deep identity, by having an understanding of our history. Number 8 of why we study the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. The life of Muhammad is a testimony of his prophethood. What does that mean? The greatest miracle of Muhammad is the Quran. Although he has many miracles other than that. However, by studying his life in itself is a testimony of his prophethood. I mean, here you have a man who for 40 years was leading a normal life. Nothing special. The only outstanding of this 40 years is what? Is his morality and his character. Nothing else. And then suddenly, after the age of 40, Muhammad brings about the greatest change in the history of humanity. Isn't that a miracle in itself? Muhammad was illiterate, could not read or write. And then he presents the world with the greatest book that was ever produced in the history of mankind. This Quran is memorized from cover to cover by millions of people. So which ideology or religion out there have their books memorized from cover to cover by its followers? None. We can go on and on about the miracles of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that actually testify his prophethood. It is impossible. It is impossible for Muhammad to achieve what he achieved without being assisted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, it is impossible for Musa to divide the sea into two without being assisted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is impossible for Isa alayhi salam, Jesus alayhi salam, to heal the sick and raise the dead without being assisted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is impossible for Ibrahim alayhi salam to escape the greatest fire built in the history of mankind without being assisted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is impossible for Jonah or Yunus alayhi salam to escape the whale without being assisted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the work of Allah, that is a testimony of prophethood through revelation. After 40 years, Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam becomes a political leader, military leader, religious leader, a head of a large household, a lawmaker, a teacher, an imam, on and on and on. All of this was done within 23 years. It is honestly impossible. And for your information, the closest person in the history of mankind to achieve some of what Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam did is Musa alayhi salam. And we will talk about that actually. There is a lot of revelation in the Bible of what survived in the Bible that talks about how Muhammad and Musa alayhi salam were very close. Which would lead us now to the last point, that is why we are studying the life of the greatest. Because Muhammad is the greatest man that ever lived on this earth. Muhammad is the greatest, and whichever or whatever benchmark you want to use for greatness, he will still come out the greatest. Michael Hart, anybody familiar with Michael Hart? He wrote the book in 1978 called The 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history. I'm sure you are very familiar with that book. After studying the lives of leaders throughout history, it became very, very, very clear to him that Muhammad is indisputably the greatest. In his introduction, he feels compelled to respond to what the readers of the book might think because he's writing for non-Muslim audience. His introduction says, and I quote Michael Hart, My choice of Muhammad to lead the list of the world's most influential leaders may surprise some readers and may be questioned by others. But he was the only man in history who was extremely successful on both the religious and the secular levels. It is this unparalleled combination of secular and religious influence which I feel entitles Muhammad to be considered the most influential personality in the history of mankind. So actually Michael Hart is compelled by the facts. There is no doubt that Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam is the greatest. But then he had to apologize to his readers to say, I'm sorry, it is what it is. You just can't deny or ignore that Muhammad is the greatest. What he's basically saying is that even if you dissect the aspects of the life of Muhammad piece by piece, he would still come out to be the greatest. If you take Muhammad as a military leader, he would be the greatest. If you take Muhammad as a religious leader, he would still come out as the greatest. If you take his personality as a human being from the moral perspective, he would still come out as the greatest. So basically he told them it is what it is. Muhammad is the greatest, whether you like it or not. So we are studying the life of Al-Mustafa, the chosen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose him to be the seal of the prophets. He chose him out of all his creations. There are many other reasons why we study the Seerah, but overall, mainly we are here today to simply learn and derive our aspirations from such a wonderful Seerah. The best Seerah, the best biography ever told.